Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Seriously Series, where we're going to do a serious series about anything that is serious about Ceres. Seriously. And you know what we take seriously in Ceres? We take our schools seriously. And since education is my wheelhouse, we will start there. We will talk about the laws, rights, responsibility, code of conduct, some curriculum, all of that good stuff. And my goal is to make it more exciting than watching snails copulate. I know I have a couple snails in my aquarium. Not very exciting. So, knowledge is power, and I want to help empower you to navigate your school system. So last year during orientation, I got this paper copy in my hands. This year, I guess they didn't see fit to give us that, but that is okay. It is online, and I will be going over them with you. So I'm going to just show you the beginning of this book, and we will take it from there. Other things that I'd like to let you know, while this is absolutely specific to Ceres, California, I would say the lion's share, about 90% of this at least, would apply to all of California because this is mostly state statutes. I'm going to show you the beginning. I'll give you a quick opinion of what I think of it, and then we're going to go right into it. So, as you can see, this says 4, 5. This page is absolutely the same, except the 4 was changed to a 5, the 5 changed to a 6. And then on the front, they have their series and they have their ridiculous little acronym here. Committed to excellence and responsive to every student. How about a little more editing and less silly acronyms that, no, you're not. But that'll be later on. So, we start off with, on the cover, they have all of the little social medias here. So if you want to stay in the loop on what's going on, they talk about their Facebook and their Polaroid camera. I think that's Instagram. And, oh, they have Twitter on there. I guess they didn't change it to X. And then they have a YouTube channel. So that's telling you they have that. Your table of contents is right here. And I'm going to read the first part of it because it's a little on the absurd side. So page 3, very good, frequently called districts. Now, for those of us counting, it's page 2 if you do not count the cover. And if you do count the cover, it's page 1. Or don't count the cover. Read my mind. Then you got your frequently called numbers right under the table of contents. Very good. And then the directory of schools right here. They have the name, the address, the phone number, and the fax number. Fax number is good to know. All right, so then they have the calendar of events. Excellent. And then we get our rights and responsibilities. I'm going to go on to here so I get these page numbers correct because, wow. And that is going to be your rights and responsibilities. The things you need to know are on page 6 to 60. That's a lot of pages. So, the purpose of this is I go through and I sorted them out in very logical ways. This was very, very random. And I put it into different categories. So we have IEP, we have medical concerns, we have curriculum, we have immigration stuff, we have all sorts of different categories. But this was like they took a wheel and went, whee! And where it landed, well, let's just put that in. It feels very random. The cynic in me thinks that's on purpose. And I'm going to call out the district for a couple of things that really, but we'll get there when we get there. But I'm going to just go over the first maybe 10 with you. So you have attendance. You have curriculum. You have curriculum. You have medical. You have another medical, athletics, medical, insurance. I mean, it is all over the place. So in this first series, I'm going to pick out the ones I think you really need to know the most. These are your rights, because you need to know where you fit in here. And oftentimes you have a place of power, but they do not let you know that. And so I'm going to inform you about that. I'm just going to read it and give you an explanation. Those clips will go on to YouTube. They'll go on to Rumble. If I can get them on to X, I'll put them there. If not, they won't be. But these are going to be short, to the point. If it's real complicated, I stop and explain. On this longer video, I will be going and giving my personal opinion if I have one. So if you want to know what I think on these, please stay on. After this video posts, I will put the clips of myself explaining your rights. So with that being said, I have just one more thing to disclose to you. I started this project last December. And so I start off with reading the number and then the page number, you'll find it. There will be some changes. If there are changes to it, I will let you know what those changes are, and then I will play the video. And speaking of which, we've got a small change. So in this year's book, we're talking about transitional kindergarten. That is number 34, and you're going to find that on page 31. So here it is. All right, number 35, transitional kindergarten, which can be found on page 26 of the handbook. The district may admit a child who will have their 5th birthday between September 2nd and June 2nd to a transitional kindergarten at the beginning of or at any time during the school year with parental guardian approval. So let's go over this first part. So if they have their 5th birthday between September 2nd and June 2nd, they can admit that child to transitional kindergarten. And they can admit that child any time of the year with parental or guardian approval. Okay, so now they can do that if A, the governing board or body determines that the admittance is in the best interest of the child, and B, the parent or guardian is given information on the advantages and disadvantages and any other explanatory information on the effects of early admittance. And there is the state statute there. All right. So, whoop, one moment. I apologize. Let's see. Oh, there I am. There I not am. There I am. I'm figuring it out. Okay, so let's say, so today is Halloween or the day before Halloween, October 30th, by the way, crosstown game today. Go Hawks. I'm sorry, Bulldogs. My son is a Hawk. I have to cheer for him. But anyway, today is the 30th. Let's say you have a child who is 4 years old today. And on February 2nd, he turns 5. You can admit your child to that transitional kindergarten when they turn 5. So this can be any time of the year. Let's say they're born May 15th. Then they can go in on May 15th. And then, again, they have to make sure that's in the best interest of the child. And you have to be informed of the advantages and disadvantages. And I want to point out that there are some disadvantages. And, you are your child's best and first teacher. If you can at all do it, you should stay with them. And one of my regrets as a parent is that I didn't redshirt my youngest son. And what redshirting is they're eligible for kindergarten. Well, we're going to keep him home another year, let him get older because he's a May baby. And so that's a struggle when they're younger than most of their peers. And so really, if you can at all stay with them, point out letters, point out numbers, do your animal sounds. And as you get older, have yourselves do rhymes and, look at words and look at letters, look at sounds. Well, look at letters and say the sounds. Those kind of things are going to get your child really ready for kindergarten. And you will be able to give that child one-on-one attention. So there is that. So that is my opinion on the transitional kindergarten. Our next one is the School Accountability Report. Next one is School Accountability Report. You're going to find that as number 36 in your book, and that will be on page 32. Okay, number 37 on page 26. School Accountability Report. Parent or guardians may request a hard copy of the School Accountability Report Card, which is issued annually for each school of the district. And so basically what it is you can go and ask for the piece of paper. They usually print out several copies, and you can say, okay, I want to see the district report card for, we'll use my son's school, Cesar Chavez Junior High. And so we'll see how that school performed, and we may see how it performs comparing to, say, May Hensley, or I can't think of the other one. And then there's your state statute to back that up. And we are going to do that as part of our Ceres series on schools. All right. So we're going to go into the AP fees. There's no change on that, so enjoy. Okay. So number 39 on page 26, assistant to cover costs of advanced placement examination fees. The district may help pay for all or part of the costs of one or more advanced placement examinations that are charged to economically disadvantaged students. And then there again is your state statute. So basically what advanced placement is the students will take what is pretty much a college course, like a freshman college course. So let's say they take a history class. So it would be a history class that they would experience in college with college level textbooks. And then at the end of that year, they take what's called an advanced placement test. And if they get a certain score on that advanced placement test, then they do not, or they get college credit. So then when they go to college and they have to take that history class, well, they don't have to take it because they already got that college credit because they took the advanced placement class in college. And they charge fees for that. And what it's saying is they'll help disadvantaged families pay for that test. So I'm just going to say this right now. Budgets reflect values, and I'll come back to that at a later time. All right. So I think that was the next one is ESSA. That is number 39. And you're going to see that on pages 32 to 34. It will be a bit of a longer video. And so I'll see you on the other side. Here I am. 7. So the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, took full effect in 2018 to replace the No Child Left Behind Act in modifying the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, ESEA. If updates are provided by the California Department of Education, the following notice may change and new information may be added. First, information regarding professional qualifications of teachers, paraprofessionals, and aides. Upon request, parents have a right to information regarding the professional qualification of their students' classrooms, teachers, paraprofessionals, and aides. This includes whether the teacher meets the state qualification and licensing criteria for the grades and subjects they teach, whether the teacher is teaching under an emergency permit or other provisional status because of special circumstances, the major or field of discipline for any degrees or certifications held by the teacher, and whether any instructional aides or paraprofessionals provide services to the parents' child, and if so, their qualifications. In addition, parents have a right to notice when the parent's child has been taught for 4 or more weeks by a teacher who is not highly qualified. And then there's the statutes for that. So basically, as a parent, you have the right to request information regarding what your child's teachers, did they go to college? Obviously they did, but if so, what did they study? What's the highest degree do they hold? Do they have a bachelor's or do they have a master's as well? Same for any teaching aides or paraprofessionals. So you have a right to know that. Information regarding individual student reports on statewide assessments. Upon request, parents have a right to information on the level of achievement of their student on every state academic assessment administered to the student. There's the statute. So basically what that says is your student will get a score. And so the big score is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your everything from your basic in their approaching, and then proficient, and then exceptional or beyond proficient or whatever they say. And then within those are individual scores, and then they break down how, say in math, how'd they do on addition, how'd they do on subtraction, how'd they do on fractions, how'd they do on decimals, how'd they do on this, that, the other. And you have a right as a parent to know how they scored on that statewide assessment. School identified for school improvement. A local educational agency shall promptly provide notice to a parent or parents of each school or each student enrolled in an elementary school or secondary school identified for school improvement. And that is a school that fails for 2 consecutive years to make adequate yearly progress as defined in the state's plan. For comprehensive support and improvement activities or targeted support and improvement activities. The notice will be in an understandable and uniform format, and to the extent practicable, in a language that parents can understand. The notice will include an explanation of what the identification means, how the school compares in terms of academic achievement to other elementary schools or secondary schools served by the local educational agency and the state educational agency, the reasons for the identification, an explanation of what the school identified for school improvement is doing to address the problem of low achievement, an explanation of what the local educational agency or state educational agency is doing to help the school address the achievement problem, an explanation of how parents can become involved in addressing the academic issues that cause the school to be identified for school improvement, and an explanation of the parents' option to transfer their child to another public school, with transportation provided by the agency when required, or to obtain supplemental educational services for the child. There's the statutes for that. So, all right, so that's a lot. So basically what happens is when the kids take their state test at the end of the year, they have certain goals they have to meet. And if they don't meet those goals for 2 years in a row, then they are going to be labeled as a school in need of improvement. And what that is telling you as a parent, you have a right to know that. You have a right to know why it was put that way. And you have a right to know what the school is doing to remedy that situation. So they may be doing different trainings, they may take a different approach. There's all sorts of things that could be going on. And then if you decide I'm not having any faith in my local school, I want my student to go somewhere else, then you can say, I want to send my child to a different school. And then it talks about public transportation. And I'm not exactly sure what that last part meant. And also if it's seen for improvement and a parent comes up and says, well, what can I do to help? They've got to be told what they can do to help. So, all right. So parent and family engagement. ESSA requires the district to notify parents of written parent and family engagement policy. And there's your state statute for it, not state statute, federal statute. The policy must include how each school will Convene an annual meeting to which all parents of participating students shall be invited and encouraged to attend. To inform parents of the requirements of this policy and the right of parents to be involved. Offer a flexible number of meetings, involve parents in an organized and timely manner in the review and development of programs under this part, including development of the parent and family engagement policy. Provide parents timely notice about programs under this part, a description of the curriculum in use at the school, the forms of academic achievement, and if requested by parents, opportunity for regular meetings to formulate suggestions and participate in decisions related to the education of their children. Allow parents to submit comments on the plan when the school makes it public. Jointly developed a compact with parents describing the school's responsibility to provide high quality curriculum in a supportive and effective learning environment, and addresses the importance of communication between parents and teachers. Provide assistance to parents of children served by the school in understanding academic standards, assessments, and the requirements of this part. Provide materials and training to help parents work with their children to improve their children's children's achievement. Educate teachers on the importance of parent outreach and communication. Coordinate parent involvement in school programs. Provide information related to school and parent programs in a format and language the parents can understand. Adopt and implement model approaches to improving parental involvement, and provide other reasonable support for parental involvement activities as parents may request. This policy shall be provided in a format and, to the extent practicable, in a language that parents will understand. Woo! ELA teachers, you've got lots of forgiving to do on this. All right, here we go. So, basically, what it's saying is schools are required to give parents the opportunity to come over and engage in the school. So I can tell you at Cesar Chavez Junior High School, they have the coffee and dinner with the principals. They have it at a variety of times. And these topics include things. So there's a few I've not been too interested in, so I don't go to them. I'm more interested in curriculums. I'm more interested in discipline. So I went to hear about the discipline system they use at the school, and at the same time, I was able to address my concerns with it. Were they heard? I don't think so. Um, And so the flexible number of meetings, that's what it means, is like the different times. Um, Now, many of the elementary schools will have what's called a parent teacher organization or parent teacher association. And that's what this is talking about. Schools have to let these organizations of parents come in and work with them, and honestly, schools love them. So I mean, it's a law that's easy to follow. Then they talk about the compact with parents. Now, I've never seen parents be directly involved, but what they'll do is it's like a contract, and I've seen those given out at things like parent teacher conferences or orientations. I've not seen them done here, at least at the school my son goes to. Educate teachers on the importance of parent outreach and communication. I'm not sure what's going on in that part because I'm a parent, I'm not a teacher. Um, So then they've got to coordinate parent involvement in school programs, provide information related to those programs, and make sure that those parents can read. And if it's practical, make sure it's in a language that's understandable. Sometimes there's really obscure languages and it's not possible. And then let's look at our last one, and that is limited English proficient students. Sometimes we call them ELLs or ESLs, English language learners, or English as a second language. It doesn't necessarily mean Spanish, it's just anyone who does not have a full understanding of the English language. So ESSA requires notice be given to parents of limited English proficient students regarding limited English proficiency programs not later than 30 days after the beginning of the school year, or for students identified later in the school year within 2 weeks. Notice includes the reasons for the identification of the student as limited English proficient, the need for placement in a language instructional education program, the student's level of English proficiency and how such a level was assessed, the status of the student's academic achievement, the methods of instruction used in the available programs, including content, instructional goals, and the use of English and native language, the exit requirements for the program, how the program meets the objectives of the student's IEP, if applicable, and parent options for removing a student from a program, declining initial enrollment, and or choosing another program, and there's your statutes. In addition, the notice shall include the following. 1. Whether the student is a long-term English learner or at risk of becoming a long-term English learner. 2. The manner in which the program will meet the needs of long-term English learners or those at risk of becoming long-term English learners. And 3, the manner in which the program will help long-term English learners or those at risk of becoming long-term English learners develop English proficiency and meet age-appropriate academic standards. And there's your state statutes. So basically what this is saying is if your student, so maybe your child's teacher says, oh, I'm not sure if the child understands English, I'm going to refer this child to limited English services. So now if they are identified before the school year begins, or like maybe during the summer, or they were that way last year, then they are to be in a program no later than 30 days after the beginning of the school year. Now, sometimes students slip through the cracks. It happens. I know, sad but true. And so that student would have 2 weeks to get started. So let's say the student looked fine in the summer, but maybe around October we saw some faltering. November, it just was unavoidable. And so right before Thanksgiving, this teacher decides, yeah, we got to refer. And then within that 2 weeks, that child's got to be in there. And I know that wasn't the best example with Thanksgiving, but sometimes it just takes a little while. Sometimes it's a transfer student, a student who transfers from another district, and maybe they didn't see that. So there's that. And so if that student is needing that program, the parents are going to get a notice, and they're going to tell you in that note why that student was referred, why that student needs to be placed in that program, what that student's level of proficiency is, and how they got to that. So you have a right to know all those things. You also have a right to know what their academic achievement is. So you may say, well, maybe their English is just a little off, but you know what? They're making straight A's. Or you may find out, well, their grades aren't that great. They may need that support. So, it's just however they get to it. And then they also have to tell you what instruction methods they're going to use. Are they going to have them read? Are they going to have them listen? Is it on a computer, pencil, or paper? And again, you have the right to look at any curriculum you want to look at as a parent. And then they've got to tell you what the exit requirements. So how do I get out of this? Well, you've got to do A, B, C, and D to this level. And it's got to be very clear. And then they've also got to tell how the program meets the objectives of, so if a student has an IEP or whatever, how is it going to meet their needs? And then as a parent, you also have the right to remove a student from the English language program, or you can decline the initial enrollment. So the school says, we'd like to put them in ESL class. You could say, no, I don't want that. And there's lots of reasons parents don't want that. And so your reason as a parent is your reason. And, you might want to discuss it, and maybe you tell them your reason and they say, oh, I understand that concern, but here's how we're going to alleviate that. So you might, it does not hurt to be open and honest with your school. And then, because they're on your team. And then 3, the manner in which the program will help the English language learner. And then they say those at becoming risk. So I'll give you an example. So when I was in Peace Corps, I learned a second language, and I got pretty good at it because it was all I was speaking. I started learning how to think in it. But now that I'm back home and I've not spoken it for forever, I don't know it. And that's what kind of happens to a lot of English language learners. They get home, they get out of school, they really don't have any exposure to English. So they're fine at school, but then they kind of lose the skills because they're not practicing at home. So that's why that is put in there. All right. The information provided above is available upon request from each of the students' schools, or you can go to the district office. Additional notices that may be required shall be sent separately, and there are the statutes. Whew, that was a lot. That was a lot indeed. And I hope you can see why I didn't want to read all of that again. That was a mouthful. So I want to just talk about a few opinions I have on this. So highly qualified, I hate that label. Some of the best teachers I know do not have an educational degree. And in fact, if Granny Ray had her way, there would be no education program. It is a waste of time. And there are a lot of them that have F's, according to NACE. But that's for another time. So I don't buy into highly qualified. I'm going to give my aunt, she actually was in the same classroom, same school for 54 years, plus another year of teaching, and she has a world's record as the longest lasting history teacher. Guess what she got her degree in? History. Education was a minor. My Aunt Mary She got a degree in psychology. She knows how a child thinks. She had an education career of 40 years. She was the best test scorer, not that I think that matters, in her district. So an education degree, in my humble opinion, get rid of them. Waste of time. Get a real degree and minor in education. Learn some classroom management, learn the signs of abuse, learn, proper procedures, and do a year or a semester of student teaching. Boom, you're done. You want to add some practicums? Fine, make it a minor. But these education majors are, this highly qualified is making our teachers worse. That is my personal, humble opinion. All right, school input or improvement. Sorry. So what they're talking about is annual, yearly progress. They want to see all these scores go up in all these different categories, and really you have to be a math genius to figure it out. And I'm going to give you an example from a school in another state. And it was a middle school. And this school did not get annual yearly progress. And this was a 7, 8, 9 school. 7th grade went up in ELA and math. 8th grade, up in ELA and math. 9th grade, up in ELA and math. SPED, up in ELA and math. All of them, except for one category with 2 students. And because those 2 students didn't get there where they were supposed to go, they failed. Now, first of all, how do you think the people who were in that category feel? How awful do you think they feel? To me, that is, sanctioned bullying and, quite frankly, child abuse. And these were like life skills kids. And why in the world are we doing that to them? They should be learning how to navigate the world because, sad but true, that's what they're going to have to do right now. Maybe when they're much older, they can get a few skills, but right now, they need to learn how to survive, not take a standardized test. All right. And here's the thing, and I'm going to be doing a video on this very soon, but kids are more than a test score. Our schools don't behave like that. And it's because of this ESSA. All right, talking about family involvement. Parents need to be involved. When parents get involved, magical things happen. So I'm going to give you a kind of fun example, and then I'm going to kind of give you a realistic one. So when I was teaching up in Washington, we would take our 6th graders. That was the highest elementary class. And we'd take them for a celebration, and we would take them to the Seattle Science Center, which is about 3.5 hours away. So this is not a small trip, not a cheap trip. Our PTO helped us get the funds to get there, helped us set up a carnival, socials. And not only did we raise the funds, and not only did the kids get an amazing experience, but the kids got some leadership because they got to set up the carnival. They got to set up these socials. They got to be the DJs and do all that. They got to be leaders. And that's where kids really, and truly learn. So parents need to be involved for those cool, amazing things. But also, they need to be involved in budgets. They need to be involved in talking about the discipline system. And I'm going to be doing a video that just rips PBIS. And you need to know what that's about. You need to know, the thing is, the private schools, they require their parents to be involved. And if you look at the success rates of private school kids versus public school, that's a huge factor. Parents need to be involved. And, you know, I go to meetings and I voice my concerns. Like I said, I don't think I'm heard, but I need to be. And I'm going to talk to you about some of that in the opinion part of that. And then as for the ESL, I just feel like we're making, pardon my French, I feel like we're making piss out of lemons when we should be making lemonade out of lemons. Instead of taking our Spanish speaking or our Chinese speaking or whatever language they speak, this should be integrated into dual language. We should be teaching our English speakers Spanish, along with our Spanish speakers English. Have our Spanish kids teach the English kids. Have our English teachers teach the Spanish kids, because most learning is done by teaching. That is the most effective way to teach, is to teach someone else. So, all right, kids, we're going to speak in Spanish. You need help? Ask. There's a group of Spanish speakers. Okay, kids, we're going to speak in English. You need some help? Talk to the English speakers. I don't see why we're doing ESL when we could do dual language. And I do have a master's in ESL, so that. All right, let's move on to the next part. I promise it's not nearly as long. Oh my gosh, that was a lot. All right. Next one is military recruitment. You will see that as number 41 on page 35 in your book. Number 42 on page 28. Military recruiter information. 20 USC section 7908 requires that school districts disclose the names, addresses, and telephone numbers of high school students to military recruiters upon request, unless parents request that this information not be released without prior written consent. Parents have the option of making such a request. If parents do not wish this information to be provided to military recruiters, they must notify the district office of this fact in writing. The writing should be directed to the district official listed below at the following address, and there she is. So if a military recruiter wants your child's name, address, and telephone number, the school has to give it unless the parent goes in and says, do not release that information to a military recruiter. If you are okay with it, then you don't have to do anything. If you are not okay with it and you do not want any correspondence with your child in the military, you would go to this person here and ask her to take your son or daughter off the list. All right, so I just need to make a quick note. It's no longer Beth Jimenez. It is Alfonso Navarro. So you would call up the district at 209-556-1500, and you would ask for Alfonso Navarro, or you could send him a letter at 2503 Lawrence Street and say, dear Mr. Navarro, I do not want my child's name given to military recruiters. And then that goes off the list. I would say maybe around sophomore year, you would If you do not want your child on a contact list for the military, that's probably when to send it in. I would probably get that in sophomore year. Now, of course, if you want that correspondence, you don't have to do anything. I know that schools are big recruiting. I have a lot of different feelings about that. I'm not going to discuss that here, but just know that it is your right to take your child. And if they turn 18, they'll need to say, hey, take me off the list. Excuse me. So next we're going to talk about pesticides. 46 on page 29 going into 30, pesticide products. That's a good alliteration there. All schools are required to provide parents or guardians with annual written notice of expected pesticide use at schools. The attached list provides the name of each pesticide product, the active ingredient or ingredients, and the internet address for further information. Parents or guardians may request prior notice of individual pesticide applications at the school. If the parent wishes to be notified every time a pesticide is going to be applied, they must complete the attached form and return it to their child's school. A copy of the integrated pest management plan for the school site or district may be provided on the school website or viewed at the school office. And there's your state statutes. So basically, that is saying to you that if you want to know how what they're using for pesticides and when they're doing it, it is your right. They also have to let you know what they're using, what their ingredients are, and when they're doing it. At minimum, they have to give it out once a year. But if you want, like every time they do a pesticide, you want to notice, you'll fill out a form and give it to the office. All right, so just a quick recap on that. First of all, that is number 45 in the book, and you will find it on page 38. And it's not just like outside, it's maybe in the cafeteria, maybe it's in the bathrooms, maybe it's in a classroom, or it's on the outside. You just want to make sure, because there have been, there are some health movements, and I know a lot of parents are getting to be more conscientious of what is my child around, what kind of chemicals. So that is definitely something you want to know. Also, every time they do a pesticide, they will make a post on their front window or their front door. And it'll be right there as you walk in. You've got to be able to see it as you go in. All right, next we're going to do pupil fees. That is number 51 on page 41. So here we go. Number 52, starting on page 31 and going into page 32, is pupil fees. A pupil enrolled in a public school will not be required to pay a pupil fee for participation in an educational activity. And there is your state statute. So it would be nice if they would be a little more specific on that. But I am assuming it's like the academic classes. So the following requirements apply to prohibited pupil fees. So the school cannot ask for money for the following. 1, All supplies, material, and equipment needed to participate in educational activities must be provided to pupils free of charge. So, I'm assuming things like if they need a graphing calculator, I know that laptops are provided to them. Number two, a fee waiver policy shall not make a pupil fee permissible. So, in other words, they might say, okay, well, we're going to put a waiver in there so you don't have to pay the fee, parent, but they're still not allowed to do that. 3, the district and its schools shall not establish a two-tier educational system by requiring a minimal education standard and also offering a second higher educational standard that pupils may only obtain through payment of a fee or purchase of additional supplies that the school district or school does not provide. Sorry about that. So in other words, if so let's say there's a science class and there's 2 tiers. One is they get the book education, the vocabulary, they get all of the demos and stuff, but in order to actually do the labs, they have to do the higher tier one. That's not allowed. If all the students don't get it, then none of the students get it. Number 4, the district and its school shall not offer course credit or privileges related to educational activities in exchange for money or donations of goods or services from a pupil or a pupil's parents or guardians. And the district and its school shall not remove course credit or privileges related to educational activities or otherwise discriminate against a pupil because the pupil or pupil's parents or guardian did not or will not provide money or donations of goods or services to the district or school. So in other words, let's say a student's parent is a landscaper, and the landscaper works on the school and says, I'll do it for free if you give my child these privileges, or you put these course credits on their transcript even though they didn't take the course. And on the flip side, they can't take away work or credit from a student because a parent refuses to pay money or do work or donate or anything to the district or the school. And then B, solicitation of voluntary donations of funds or property and voluntary participation in fundraising activities are not prohibited. The district and its schools are not prohibited from providing pupils prizes or other recognition for voluntarily participating in fundraising activities. So there's 2 things going on here. Number 1, voluntary donations of funds or property, or so let's say there's a raffle. So a school's trying to raise money, and so several local businesses might donate gift cards or product. So that's allowed. But it would be more like, I'm doing this as a business. I'm doing this for donation. There's no strings attached. You're not going to get privileges for your child if you do that. The other one is schools are not prohibited from providing pupil prizes or other recognition for volunteers. So oftentimes You'll see kids with these little like folder-like things, paper that folds maybe 2 or 3 times, and it has all these little things for sale. And they said, we are fundraising for our schools. They are not prohibited from giving prizes to kids who participate in things like that. Also, another example is we did a carnival where we did a raffle and there were prizes for those raffles. So those are okay as well. And so those are all allowed. A complaint of noncompliance may be filed under our friend District's Uniform Complaint Procedures and Title V of the California Code of Regulations, and there's your state statute. Okay, in my defense, I had a long work day that day, and yeah. So I'm going to just do some clarifications there. And I think I was pretty clear. I'm going to make a comment on number 4, and then I'm going to get into that donation stuff again. So remember, I was telling you about parent participation. At these private schools, it is required. That is a requirement. You will help out. But this I have a lot of problems with, because when the parents do show up, when the parents do put their mark on there, they have more ownership in that school. They have more skin in the game. And the more skin you have in the game, the better that school's going to be. Because now we have yet another interested stakeholder. And oh, hey, this interested stakeholder is footing the bill as a property taxpayer. So, knowledge is power. So I'm going to give, let's say I did a fundraiser for a club. I'm doing this as a donation. I am allowed to do that. I am allowed to help out the school. Let's say we do the club, they get the money. I should not expect any special favors. You're doing it because you want a better school, not because you're doing it for your own self-aggrandizement. That is kind of how that goes. So we've had stuff donated to us for raffles. We are not prohibited from taking those gifts. Also, we've had gifts donated for us to give to students. Gift card. Hey, you got on the honor roll. Such and such restaurant gives you a reward. There's a lot of, there was one, we would participate in a reading contest, and if you read so many books, you got a pizza. This one was amazing. This one was, and I'm sure there's some that participate. I'm sure Six Flags does this, but we had Silverwood. And if the kids read a certain number of books, they got a ticket to Silverwood. How awesome is that? So there are prizes that companies will donate in order to give prizes, motivations, recognitions. Schools say, do what you want. Another one that was kind of cool. I don't know if it exists anymore. It's really unfortunate if it doesn't, but it did go downhill. And that's Sherry's restaurant with their pies. And on Pie Day, I was donated a couple of actual pies. So that was cool. And businesses are allowed to do that. And we wrote our little thank you notes. It was really fun. A service. One time I had a meteorologist come in and talk to our kids when we were studying weather. And he got a lot of thank you notes because that was for our entire 600 kids, 6th grade class. So outside wants to help out all the time. So, if you have special skill, go help them. Again, that gives you skin in the game. All right, I went a long time on this. But I'm going to say again that budgets reflect values. And I'm not sure what activities they were talking about. Does that mean they also don't pay fees for athletics and band? If so, that's excellent. That's a good value in our budget because this is what helps kids learn, helps them give the real value. And no offense to the math teachers, I used to be one myself. You're not nearly as important as those other classes that ignite their imagination. Now, that's not saying they don't need to learn math. That's not saying they don't need to learn reading. Quite the contrary. Those that don't know how to read are at the mercy of those who do. Never forget that. And if you're one of those parents who are saying, well, I'm going to unteach them to read, just remember you're putting up at the mercy of people who do know how to read. Okay. I'm going to get a breath in before we talk about this next one because I have thoughts and lots of them. And that is, of course, our state standardized test. Let's discuss. See you on the other side. Number 55 on page 32. California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. The California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, or that alphabet soup, includes Smarter Balance summative assessments in English language arts and math in grades 3 through 8 and 11, and California Alternative Assessments, CAA, in English language arts and math in grades 3 through 8 and 11 for students with significant cognitive disabilities. The California Science Test, CAST, for science is required for all students in grades 5, 8, and once in high school unless the student's IEP indicates administration of CAA. Students in grades 3 through 8 and high school may choose to take the optional standard-based test in Spanish, CSA, for reading and language arts. The CAASPP includes an assessment for students whose primary language is a language other than English upon enrollment in a California public school. A parent or guardian may make a written request to excuse their child from any or all parts of the assessment, and there are your state statutes. And so basically what this is talking about are the big tests, the ones they seem to live and die for. And those are, the big one is called Smarter Balance Summative Assessments. And they are going to be in your English language arts, that's your reading, that's your writing, and then there's going to be math. Those tests start in grades 3, they go into grades 8, and then I guess they take it in grade 11 as well. And then if somebody has a significant cognitive ability, there's the California Alternative Assessment. That would be for your special education students. And when I say special education, I'm talking life skills, maybe students who have autism, real significant autism, or students who have MR, students who have significant verbal abilities. That's where we're going to see that CAA. And then there's the California Science Test. I don't know where I guess CA would be California. And that's taken in grades 5 through 8. And then in high school, a student's IEP indicates the administration of CAA. Okay, so it has to be set on an IEP. Okay. Students could choose to take their standards-based test in Spanish for the ELA and language arts if they choose. I'm not sure if math would be an option because there might be some kids who still need that Spanish for math as well, depending if they're real new and low on the achievement scale. All right. So these California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress are made for students whose primary language is English. And then here in the reaction, I'm really going to harp on this one. But right here, if you do not want your child to take the standardized test, you may write a note to the administration and say, I do not want my child to take the test. And you would say, I do not want my child to take the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment. And then again, you have your codes. Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one indeed. So I need to let you know that it went from number 55 to 59. I had to really search for it. And I'm going to try to show you on my tablet because unfortunately I can't seem to get that internet page on my screen. I'm going to see if I can get you to see this. But they moved it significantly. But also, as you can see, it's number 59. There's no title. There's nothing. You could so easily miss that. And this is one of the most powerful things you can do to influence your child's education. There are a lot of kids in schools where the vast majority opt out. And they tend to do a lot better. They tend to be just happier. They tend to be more comfortable learning. And I'm going to do a more extensive video on this. But here is what happens. And I've seen a lot of videos that go, well, why can't they read? Why? Well, here's what happens. We have these things called standards. Kinder, first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way up to 12th grade or high school standards. And what happens is usually all the kinders get it. Usually all the first graders get it. But around second grade, there's a couple of kids who, for whatever reason, they don't get it. But instead of having that opportunity to do it again, well, now we're in third grade. We can't look at second grade standards. That's second grade. We got to be in third grade now. So instead of reaching the child where they are, we're now working at this third grade standard because we have a pissing contest, standardized test to take. And in third grade, a lot of kids drop off. A lot. And so you've got a bunch of now kids that don't have the third grade standard. They're in fourth grade now, but they're not getting that chance to catch up. Oh no, we got a test to take. We're going to take fourth grade now. Then it's in fifth grade. And now you've got kids that are 2-3 years behind. And then when they get into high school, they're at a middle school level. And instead of honoring them for where they are, instead of honoring their individuality, no, we got a test to take. And so every year, 3 through 8, I have opted all 3 of my children out. Because to put a child and then expect them to learn something when they don't have that foundation and you didn't scaffold it for them, no, that's unacceptable. You've got to meet them where they are. And with those standardized tests, they will not do it because they are disincentivized to do it. And I'm going to end it on this. It doesn't have to do with attitude or grit. It has to do with understanding how the mind works. And you would think a teacher of all people would know how a child's mind works. But as I said earlier in this video, the vast majority of teacher schools are getting Fs according to NACE. In fact, I would be surprised if developmentally appropriate practice was ever uttered in modern day teacher schools. I don't know for sure, but from what I've been seeing, I don't think it is. Okay. I am going to move on. Take a breath. And we're going to talk about FERPA. That is going to be found on page 47. So we have our numbered rights and responsibilities, and then we just get these pretty much statements. So there's no number attached to the rest of these. You're going to find FERPA on page 47 of your book. Here you go. Okay, so on page 36, if you go down about a third of the way, it is the FERPA notification. So date published is July 1st, 2024 from the California Department of Education. It is notification of rights under FERPA for elementary and secondary schools. The Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, affords parents and students over 18 years of age, eligible students, certain rights with respect to the student's education records. So, parents, if the child is 17 or under, students, if the child is 18 or over. And these rights will be, number one, the right to inspect and review the student's education record within 45 days of the day the school receives request for access. Parents or eligible students should submit to the school principal a written request that identifies the records they wish to inspect. The school official will make arrangements for access and notify the parent or eligible student of the time and place where the records may be inspected. So the parent or the eligible student says, I want to look at my records, gives that to the principal. Principal has 45 days to say, okay, here are your records. We will meet at the conference room in the high school, or we'll meet at the district office or wherever. Number two, the right to request amendment of the student's education records that the parent or eligible student believes are inaccurate, misleading, or otherwise in violation of the student's privacy acts under FERPA. So again, there could be an amendment or the parent or eligible student say, I want to change this in my record. This is wrong. This can draw somebody to the wrong conclusion. Or putting this in violates my privacy. And you're violating FERPA. So parents or eligible students may ask the school to amend a record that they believe is inaccurate or misleading. They should write to the school principal, clearly identify the part of the record they want changed, and specify why it is inaccurate or misleading. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If the school decides not to amend the record as requested by the parent or eligible student, the school will notify the parent or eligible student of the decision and advise the parent or eligible student of the right to a hearing regarding the request for an amendment. Additional information regarding the hearing procedures will be provided to the parent or eligible student when notified of the right to a hearing. So they will have for you so if they decide not to amend the record, they will have for you or tell you you have a right to a hearing. At that time, they will give you information about the hearing procedures. So you can go ahead and apply and you can be ready to make your case. They have to be able to give that to you. 3, the right to consent to disclosures of personally identifiable information contained in the student's education records, except to the extent that FERPA authorizes disclosure without consent. So what that's saying is parents or students over 18 or over, have to consent to have something in their records looked at, but there are exceptions to that. And here are those exceptions. One exception which permits disclosure without consent is disclosure to school officials with legitimate educational interests. And a school official would be a person employed by the school as an administrator, supervisor, instructor, or support staff member, and that would include health, medical staff, and law enforcement unit personnel, a person serving on the school board, a person or company with whom the school has contracted to perform a special task, such as an attorney, auditor, medical consultant, or therapist, or a parent or student serving on an official committee, such as a disciplinary or grievance committee, or assisting another school official in performing their tasks. Okay, so let's go over these. So let's say there's a group of teachers, they're trying to work on improving test scores on a certain subject, and they all decide to give this assessment, and they're going to look over the scores and see how they can improve instruction. That would be a legitimate educational interest. Another one would be someone like a supervisor, which would be somebody who monitors for discipline. They may say, okay, I need to see referrals from wherever these places are coming from, so they might know where to monitor. Personal data would be viewed by that supervisor, not so they can, but so they can see where to go and supervise. A person serving on the school board. So, school board members have a very big interest in making sure that things are going well. And so they'll or occasionally ask for data. A person or company with whom the school is contracted. So this could be an attorney. So let's say something legal is going on and an attorney has to look at a student's records. Auditors, where is money being spent? Or medical consultant. There are, it looks like some, I've seen it on Parent Square where they have like medical services offered along with therapy services. And then sometimes parents or students are serving on disciplinary or grievance committees, but they would do this in an official committee and they would not be allowed to talk about it outside of committee, or they could get in trouble. And if it violates FERPA, I'm sure they could get sued for it. Or they're assisting a school official in performing their tasks. So maybe a principal calls up another one, says, hey, can I get a second set of eyes on what you think I should do about this? And so that principal would come over and be a second set of eyes. All right. A school official has a legitimate educational interest if the official needs to review an education record in order to fulfill their professional responsibility. In addition, the Student Aid Commission may have access to the grade point average of all district students in grade 12 and, when required, verification of high school graduation or its equivalent of all students who graduated in the prior academic year, for use in the Cal Grant Post-Secondary Financial Aid Program. However, such information shall not be submitted when a student or their parent or guardian, if the student is under 18 years of age, opts out or is permitted by rules of the Student Aid Commission to provide test scores in lieu of their GPA. There's the statutes. So I'm going to go back and explain because that was a lot. So the Student Aid Commission will ask the district for all the grade point averages of the 12th graders who just left. And if they ask for it, verification of graduation. And that is going to be used for the Cal Grant Post-Secondary Financial Aid Program. So that's to help pay for college. However, a parent is allowed to opt out of this Student Aid Commission, or it looks like another thing they can do is provide test scores in lieu of their GPA. Although I don't know what tests they're talking about. Is that their standardized tests? Is that their ACT or SAT? I'm not sure. All right, moving on. No later than January 1st of each year, the superintendent or designee shall notify each student in grade 11 and the student's parents or guardian, if the student is under 18 years of age, that the student's GPA will be forwarded to the Student Aid Commission by October 1st, unless the student opts out within a period of time specified in the notice, which shall not be less than 30 days, and there's a state statute. So, no later than. So, by January 1st, every student in 11th grade or their parent or guardian, if that student is under 18 years of age, will have their palm lined with a notice that says all GPAs are going to be forwarded to the Student Aid Commission. And on that notice, it will say, if you want to opt out, do it by this time. And that time has to be more than 30 days. Upon request, the school discloses education records without prior consent to officials of another school district in which a student seeks or intends to enroll. So, if a student is moving to another school, they don't need consent to move those records to the new school. Number 4, the right to file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education concerning alleged failures by the school to comply with the requirements of FERPA. And you're going to give the name and address that administers FERPA, and that's in Washington, D.C. So that's a federal thing. And so that is FERPA. I think that was pretty self-explanatory. And I forgot to mention one thing. There's a lot of, not a lot, but some students who graduate, they're mostly 17. They'll take some extra classes. I had a girl, she was 17 years old. She did high school in 3 years. There's some kids, you hear about those kids who are 14, 15 going to college. Now, those kids are also going to be opted out because they are not of age. They are not adults. They are still minors, and so their data cannot be out there. So that was just a clarification. Next, we're going to talk about PPRA, and you will find that on page 55. Model Notification of Rights Under the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, PPRA, found on page 42 of your handbook. PPRA affords parents certain rights regarding our conduct of surveys, collection, and use of information for marketing purposes, and certain physical exams. So if they are giving you any of these surveys, or they're conducting certain physical exams, they have to get the parents' consent first. So these include the right for parents of a minor to: Part A, consent before students are required to submit a survey that concerns one or more of the following protected areas, and they call it a protected information survey. So if it is a protected area in it, one of these 8, it's going to be a protected information survey. You'll see that written throughout instead of anything else. If the survey is funded in whole or in part by a program of the U.S. Department of Education. So, number 1, political affiliations or beliefs of the student or student's parent. 2, mental or psychological problems of the student or student's family. 3, sex behavior or attitude. 4, illegal, antisocial, self-incriminating, or demeaning behavior. 5, critical appraisals of others with whom respondents have close family relationships. 6, legally recognized privileged relationships such as with lawyers, doctors, or ministers. 7, religious practices, affiliations, or beliefs of the student or parents. Or 8, income, other than as required by law to determine program eligibility. So that is that form they have you fill out every year at the beginning of the year, and you list all the people in your family and you talk about your incomes, and then you turn it in. And that's not only to determine free and reduced lunch eligibility, it helps with things like Title I. So they really need that information because it helps them get funding. But outside that, if they ask you about income, you have to get consent first, or they have to get your consent first. Okay, now, these also include the rights for parents of minor students to B, receive notice and... Sorry, I'm going to just do a quick interruption on this because I want to clarify that just a little better. So those 8 things, I'm just going to rewind it just a tiny bit. There we go. So I'm going to give you a real life example. I think examples help people see it clearer. So we did a survey when I was up in Washington, and we gave the students surveys. Now, we did not collect names, but they were taking these surveys, and it asked about these different things, mostly about sex and drugs, not necessarily the rock and roll, though. They weren't trying to bust kids. They weren't trying to do any of that. But what they wanted to see was, are we perceiving these children correctly? And this was done kind of in the beginning of the year, around this time. So not beginning, but a couple months in, so we could actually do something. And they asked about attitudes. They asked about social media usage. As a result of some of those, we started boning up the internet safety stuff, because we detected some dangerous activities. But before that went out, we were letting parents know, hey, this is coming up. This is coming up. We had it to where parents could see it, because this is personal information. Our survey wasn't a gotcha survey. It was, is there somewhere we need to focus and we don't know? And sometimes the best way is to just ask. That's an example that I'm giving to you. Hopefully that helps. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything with Ceres on that yet. So, but if they do ask questions like that, then they have to get consent from the parents, or if the child is over 18, that student. All right, let me get back to this. I apologize. Of minor students to be receive notice and an opportunity to opt a student out. And you opt the student out of one, any other protected information service, regardless of funding. So let's say Cesar Chavez Junior High School wants to do their own survey. Parents still get the opportunity to opt their student out. So I will admit I am not sure what number 2 is talking about. Any non-emergency invasive physical exam or screening required as a condition of attendance, administered by the school or its agent, and not necessary to protect the immediate health and safety of a student, except for hearing, vision, or scoliosis screening, or any physical exam or screening permitted or required under state law. I mean, maybe like a vaccination, but that's not exactly an invasive physical exam. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Number 3, where you could get a notice and opt out. Activities involving collection, disclosure, or use of personal information obtained from students for marketing or to sell or otherwise distribute the information to others. And then, going back up here, these include the right for parents of minor students to see, inspect upon request and before administration or use, 1, protective information surveys of students. So, in other words, if you get a notice saying, we're doing this survey, you as a parent have the right to go in and say, I want to see that survey before you give it to my child. 2, instruments used to collect personal information from students for any of the above marketing, sales, or other distribution purposes. So they'll let you know how it's collected. Usually it's, what I've seen is they'll give like a link for the students to go to a website, and they do it on their school issued computers, is what I'm going to assume it's going to be the instrument used. And then 3, and this seems a little off to me on this one because it doesn't talk about a survey, but you do have the right as a parent and a taxpayer to inspect instructional material used as part of the education curriculum. So you have the right to go in and look at the science book. You have a right to go in and peruse the math stuff. You have a right to look at the education curriculum presented to your students and what your tax dollars paid for. Okay, now we are on page 43. These rights transfer from the parent to the student who is 18 years old or an emancipated minor under state law. So basically, when the student becomes an adult or is emancipated, the rights go from the parent to the student. Ceres Unified School District will develop and adopt policies in consultation with parents regarding these rights, as well as arrangements to protect student privacy in the administration of protected surveys and the collection, disclosure, or use of personal information for marketing, sales, or other distribution purposes. So they're saying the district will make sure that privacy is protected. So when the students talk about, and they are encouraged to be honest and candid. So when they say, yes, I've done something, they're going to make sure that that privacy is protected, so that student feels safe to share. The Ceres Unified School District will directly notify parents of these policies at least annually at the start of each school year and after any substantive changes. So beginning of the school year, and then say in February there's a big change to the policy, that is when they'll also notify you. Ceres Unified School District will also directly notify, such as through U.S. mail or email, parents of students who are scheduled to participate in the specific activities or surveys noted below, and will provide an opportunity for the parent to opt their child out of participation of the specific activity or survey. Also, you're going to want to look at your parent square on that. So they have to notify you, and if you want to opt your child out, that is your right. Ceres Unified School District will make this notification to parents at the beginning of the school year if the district has identified the specific or approximate dates of the activities or surveys at that time. For surveys and activities scheduled after the school year starts, parents will be provided reasonable notification of the planned activities and will also be provided an opportunity to review any pertinent surveys. And so I believe that is a 30-day notification. So they have to notify you at least 30 days before the survey or the activity. The following is a list of the specific activities and surveys covered under this requirement. So number 1, collection, disclosure, or use of personal information for marketing, sales, or distribution. Okay, so parents have to be notified. Number 2, parents have to be notified on the administration of any unprotected information survey not funded in whole or in part by the Department of Education. So if the Department of Education has its thumb in that pie, then it applies. It doesn't matter if it's protected or unprotected. Opt-out is an option. And 3, and I talked about this earlier, any non-emergency invasive physical examination or screening as described above. And again, I'm not exactly sure, is that an inoculation? Is that something else? Parents or eligible students who believe their rights have been violated may file a complaint with, and it will be the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. All right, that was quite a bit. So just know you have the rights to opt out of any activity. You have the rights to opt out of surveys, especially if it's personal information. Best thing to be is in the know. And if I get anything like that and I can share it with you, I definitely will. Because again, knowledge is power. All right, so this won't apply. We have 2 more to go through. The next one is immigration rights, and that is going to be found on page 55 of the book. Know your educational rights. States. Immigration enforcement from the California Attorney General. I guess they want to shout it from the rooftops because it's on all caps. I don't know. Or maybe they're dividing up page 40. So we went from sexual harassment, and now the bottom, about fourth of it, is immigration enforcement from the California Attorney General. So your child has the right to a free public education. So they want you to know that your child has the right to be at school. All children in the United States have a constitutional right to equal access to free public education, regardless of immigration status and regardless of the immigration status of the students' parents or guardians. So that is federal. That is every state in the union has that right to be at school to a free, fair, public education. California has a few additions. In California, all children have the right to a free public education. All children ages 6 to 18 years must be enrolled in school. All students and staff have the right to attend safe, secure, and peaceful schools. All students have the right to be in a public school learning environment, free from discrimination, harassment, bullying, violence, and intimidation. Going on to page 41. All students have equal opportunity to participate in any program or activity offered by the school and cannot be discriminated against based on their race, nationality, gender, religion, or immigration status, among other characteristics. The information required for school enrollment will be: when enrolling a child, schools must accept a variety of documents from the student's parent or guardian to demonstrate the child's age or residency. You never have to provide citizenship, immigration status to have your child enrolled in school. Also, you never have to provide a social security number to have your child enrolled in school. Confidentiality of personal information. Federal and state laws protect student education records and personal information. These laws generally require that schools get written consent from parents or guardians before releasing student information, unless the release of the information is for educational purposes, is already public, or is in response to a court order or subpoena. So an educational purpose might be a group of students are trying to see where or a group of teachers are trying to see where their students stand, so they look at some test scores. Already public, so there might be a public roster of the athletic team, or in response to a court order or subpoena. That's pretty self-explanatory. Some schools collect and provide publicly basic student directory information. If they do, then each year your child's school district must provide parents or guardians with written notice of the school's directory information policy and let you know if your option to refuse release of your child's information in the directory. This would be a great place to put what Ceres' policy is. Family safety plans if you are detained or deported. You have the option to provide your child's school with emergency contact information, including the information of secondary contacts to identify a trusted adult guardian who can care for your child in the event you are detained or deported. So in other words, if you go to jail or you're deported, you have the option to complete a caregiver's authorization affidavit or a petition for appointment of temporary guardian of the person, which may enable a trusted adult the authority to make educational and medical decisions for your child. Right to file a complaint. Your child has the right to report a hate crime or file a complaint to the school district if they are discriminated against, harassed, intimidated, or bullied on the basis of their actual or perceived nationality, ethnicity, or immigration status. So there's one perceived example was around 9/11. A lot of the Sikhs got accused of being Muslim terrorists, even though it wasn't the same thing. It was a perceived thing, and still very wrong to do. Don't do that. It's not okay. For more information on resources for responding to immigration enforcement activities at California schools, or to file a complaint, please contact the Bureau of Children's Justice, which is part of the California Attorney General's office. And then there's the address, phone number, website. And then you can download all of the publications right there. And that ends page 41. Okay, so that was a lot, and I'm not sure how that's going to age. There's been a lot going on. I'm hoping that all students get a free, appropriate, and fair education in a peaceful environment, because let's hope this stays. Like I said, I'm not sure how that's going to age. But basically, the Social Security number, there are states that do require a Social Security number. I know Arkansas does, but California does not. And then I'm going to just go on to healthy schools. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments if you need any clarifications on that. So our last one is healthy schools, and that's going to be found on page 56 in this book. Healthy Schools Act of 2000. And this is on page 42, very top. Notice to all students, parents, guardians, and employees of the Ceres Unified School District. Education code sections there require, among other things, that school districts notify parents and staff about the use of pesticides at schools. The purpose is to reduce exposure to toxic pesticides through information and application of an integrated pest management system at schools. Toward this end, and pursuant to the requirements of this legislation, please be advised of the following. So let me go ahead and go through this. So basically, if they use a pesticide, they have to let you know, and they're trying to reduce exposure to toxic pesticides by using what they call an integrated pest management system. I don't know what that means, but that's what they're using. Parents, guardians of Ceres Unified School District can register with the district's designee to receive notification of individual pesticide applications by calling 209-566-1500, extension 1540. Persons who register for this notification shall be notified at least 72 hours prior to the application, except in emergency. I apologize, had a little glitch there. All right, so the extension is actually 1450. I'm a little dyslexic. I apologize for that. It's 1450. All right, let's move along. At least 72 hours prior to the application, except in emergencies, and will be provided the name and active ingredient or ingredients of the pesticide, as well as its intended date of application. Pretty self-explanatory there. If you wish to access information on pesticide and pesticide use reduction developed by the Department of Pesticide Regulation pursuant to California Food and Agricultural Code Section 13184, you can do so by accessing the department's website at www.cdpr.ca.gov. All right, so those were the ones I thought were the big rights to look at. And I'm just going to let you know these are my interpretations. I feel like I probably got them all pretty well hit, but if I didn't, or if I wasn't clear on something, please put it in the comments. And if I do find that I might have gotten something wrong, I will correct it immediately, because knowledge is power, but incorrect knowledge isn't going to get you anything. But these are some of your rights. These are things that I feel you would really want to know. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that it was more exciting than watching paint dry. This is very dense. There's numbers in your sentences and weird symbols, and it's a lot to go through, and I hope that I can help you go through it. I will be putting the clips out tomorrow on Halloween. And, oh, I got to put this back on. There we go. I took it off because it was interfering with some of our print. So, happy Halloween. Love to both schools, but go Hawks. And next time, we'll get back to our book. Bye for now.